All right, good evening. We will call to order the October 28th regular meeting of the Pacheco Stormwater District. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, so we don't normally do a roll call in this meeting, but let's just let the record reflect that Trustee Schroeder and Trustee Escona are present and Trustee Alfaro is absent tonight. Okay, so now we will take public comment. This is for any item that is not on the agenda.
The Pacheco Stormwater District welcomes your comments. Each individual speaker would be limited to a presentation total of 3 minutes. When addressing the trustees via Zoom, phone, or in chambers, please state your name and county in which you reside for the record. Please address the trustees as a whole through the chair. If participating via Zoom, select the Participants tab and click the Raise Hand icon. If you are using a phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. When your turn arrives, you will hear that you have been unmuted. If you are participating in person at the chambers, please complete a speaker card identifying the item on which you wish to speak and provide your completed card to the clerk prior to consideration of the item. Speaker cards are available on the table at the entrance to the chambers. Okay, there appears to be no public comment.
Thank you, Victor. We will move on to the consent agenda, which includes the acknowledgement of certificate of posting and approval of the minutes from the last meeting, September 23rd. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I motion that we approve the consent agenda.
And I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, so the consent agenda is approved. We will now move to the regular agenda. First up, 5.1. This is a presentation from the Office of Emergency Services on alert and warning systems. And we have with us Chris Mangano. Welcome, Chris.
There's no audio online, just a note.
Okay, thank you. I'm Chris Mangano with the Office of Emergency Services. Going to introduce you to our alert and warning system that we implemented last year, and we did a test on it in November. If you are a registered voter in San Benito County, you should be on the alert and warning system. You can also, I have QR codes that you can scan to register. If you aren't a voter, or if you didn't get the alert, or if you're unsure, you can go to that. But basically it will text you, email you, or call a landline, or do all three if that's what you select, and it does translate in multiple languages if you select those as well. So it's a pretty robust system. We are using it in conjunction with Santa Cruz Regional 911, our dispatch center, and the County of Santa Cruz is using it also. The alert is a notification that is triggered by a specific event or condition. It is a message that is intended to inform someone of a situation that requires their immediate attention. We are not using it like Nixle, which is much more kind of flexible that we can put out to avoid an area. This will be used specifically for a situation that needs or requires immediate action or response. We also can use our National Weather Service. They're called NOAA alerts, and those are the alerts that broadcast on cell phones, or if you have a National Weather Service radio, we did distribute those last year as well. And those do a beep, 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 and you get that regardless on your cell phone. And that again has to be a pretty critical alert to be going out. Other forms of platforms that we use in San Benito County, the Nixle, as I mentioned, all of our social media online, Instagram, Facebook, and we do use X, formerly Twitter, and then our websites. And 211 is a resource that we rely heavily on, and OES actually is a financial supporter of them. So that works very well. So this is our little logo for SBC Alert. As I said, it does go out over your cell phone, email, and in many languages. I have the QR code, or you can text 65513 to register using your phone. We will be introducing a Know Your Zone, which is fairly new. Our GIS department has worked very diligently to put all of our addresses in the county map on with a special zone that we're calling it. So if you go into this COSB maps, you will type in your address and it'll tell you what zone you're in. So when we do an alert or warning, we can actually say that zone 2311, I don't know if that's a zone, but we can call out a zone that is in that area that either needs to be evacuated, shelter in place, etc. So we will start this in the next couple weeks with the Know Your Zone and getting that out. Nixle, I kind of talked about that. It's just a simpler alert for weather, criminal activities, traffic, missing person, a local event, avoid an area type of thing. And then 211 we use mainly for resources. If there's road closures, we can use them to provide details on how to go around it or work around it, where sandbags are, things like that. They would also know if we have shelters open and where they are and how to access those. And then the National Weather Service is the weather radios that we distributed are pre-programmed for San Benito County, so those alerts would be specific to this county if we did use those. And then all of our social media information. We also use San Benito County government, San Benito County Sheriff, and the City of Hollister is our partners on social media, and they usually repost or like or share for us. FEMA does have the alert and warning system. It has to be something that's a life-saving emergency. There's a whole list of criteria that we need to go through in order to have them put out an alert. It is similar to an Amber Alert, and it's taken pretty seriously. We've not done one here. I don't know if we ever have, but we can, and we have that capability. That's our alert and warning. I do have the postcards that I will distribute, and I'll leave them in the back. And I urge you to check to see if you're registered, and if not, get registered so you are aware of what's happening. Any questions?
I have a question. Thank you, first of all, for
Sure.
that. That was very informative. So you said that every registered voter in the county is part
Was
of
imported into this database, correct?
So, because I'm thinking, I mean, I registered an awfully long time ago, right?
Get a ballot?
I do get a ballot.
Then-
So, but I don't even know if they have my cell phone number.
They may not have your cell phone number, but they
Yeah.
probably have an email or a landline. So it would be beneficial to go into this,
That
just
was
even
gonna be my
update.
question,
And you
yeah.
can put in cell phone, multiple emails. You can, if you have, let's say your family lives here, but you don't, you could put their address in your phone, so it will alert you if something's going on in their area.
Okay.
So it has many capabilities.
What about, because in past years I've signed up for other alert systems, I can't remember what it was now.
We used to have Code Red in San
Yeah,
Benito
Code
County.
Red,
So
okay.
everything from Code Red was imported into SBC Alert.
Oh.
This does many things that the Code Red didn't do, mainly translates into multiple languages, and Code Red did not have that capability. And it's
So-
very important that we can get the message out in different languages.
Yeah, so in theory, if you were registered for Code Red, you should also be registered for this.
Correct. If your emails changed, your cell phones changed,
Yeah.
you'd want to update it.
Okay.
But otherwise, you would be in the system.
Okay, great.
And you can call our office, we can look it up too if you're struggling with how to do it.
Okay,
It is
but
out
you
there.
said, I wrote it down, you just text to this number 65513 and that's how you register.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any public comment on 5.1?
Yes, we do have a public comment in chambers. Rochelle Greeley, you can approach the podium.
I wanted to follow up on the presentation tonight, on the emergency. When I attended on behalf of the Pacheco Stormwater District, I attended the, Army Corps of Engineer levee project. And a lot of information came out that appeared to be beneficial for the county if we were registered to work with Army Corps of Engineer. So I wanted to find out is our county registered with Army Corps of Engineer? Okay, yes, so then they said that we should have, after this last emergency that we had in last year with the flooding, that we should have been able to receive, they would send out a letter and then we would have to respond with a phone call, but they would provide like debris removal up to 10 days after the storm or the event that took place, whereas FEMA has to wait to get the approval for the declaration from the government to the president, but it seems that Army Corps would be out there on the spot and would help with such situations, so. You mean in order to work with them? Okay, that was not mentioned, but it seemed that if they call it rehabilitation assistance. Maybe we can convene and talk because I do have some info on that. And I remember thinking that it would be great if we were registered as a county. And therefore, our district in particular could really, I think, get some use out of it. Okay.
Is there any other public comment on this agenda item?
There appears to be no further public comment.
All right, we will move on then to 5.2. As always, an update regarding debris removal and levee repair. Well, anyway, I'll just let you present.
Thank you. All right, good evening, trustees. Steve Luke, Public Works Administrator with the County of San Benito. So we will jump into item 5.2. So, regarding debris removal, we have obtained all burn permits. 2 of the 3 sites have been completed. The debris has been burned, and those 2 sites are in really good condition. I have reached out to CAL FIRE a couple times because the 3rd site, the debris pile is next to a large, I think it's a walnut orchard. I'm not sure exactly. My tree knowledge is kind of limited, but we didn't want to burn the 3rd pile without CAL FIRE or the fire department accommodating or excuse me, to be there on site present with us. And so they actually, CAL FIRE and probably our fire department, but I just reached out to CAL FIRE. They were off, called on to other sites, I guess. And so I just reached out again today and asked them if we could meet at the 3rd site and finish burning the 3rd pile. So we'll see, but there is 1 pile still yet to be burned. And then for the levee repairs, we do have all the sections filled out for the permit. Finally, there is 1 section that it's just 1 part of the permit that says we need U.S. Army Corps confirmation that they do not take jurisdiction for this area of levee repair. And I'll show you a diagram in a moment, but they typically take jurisdiction when the project is below the ordinary high water mark, which is the average flow elevation of the creek. And earlier on, a few months ago, we thought that taking some photos of, well, I'll show you an image to kind of explain the ordinary high water mark just a bit. So the ordinary high water mark is area where there's not a lot of tree vegetation growth. There can be tules and some other bamboo type of plants that would grow in the ordinary high water mark area, but typically your established trees and things grow above the ordinary high water mark, which in the county's opinion, that's where the final levee repair is occurring. So we don't think the Army Corps is going to take jurisdiction. So I reached out to 2 folks with the Army Corps that are our contacts to try to get some kind of confirmation that they don't need to be involved with the permit is the bottom line. And I also talked to our environmental consultant, and she gave me the guidance to send them the photos, show them where things are at, and we all don't think that they're going to take jurisdiction, and therefore the permit would just go straight to the California State Water Board, which is the permit we have filled out. The other thing about the permit, which has been confirmed, is because just the size of the area of levee repair that we're finishing, it's small, so we've got confirmed that it's the correct permit. You just have to fill out this. You have to get. It could be email confirmation that Army Corps does not need to be involved in the project. And even when we did the debris removal back in, months ago, they at that point were not going to take jurisdiction either. So we just need confirmation, and then we can submit the permit. So I'm trying to do that. Tried to do it this morning. Try to do it Thursday. But once we get that confirmation, then we can submit the permit and finish the levee repairs. So that's where that is at. And so what you're seeing, so the ordinary high water mark is where it flows. They're called like a 10-year storm flows. It's the more frequent storm events occur. That's the ordinary high water mark. That's another way to classify it. So once it gets up to the 25-year and the 100-year, that's usually above and outside of jurisdiction. And once you get to the top of banks, the Army Corps, unless you're rebuilding the entire levee from the ground up, they usually don't take jurisdiction. So we'll see. So that's where that status is at. And yeah, then we can go to the FEMA status after we discuss those for comments by the public or the trustees.
Are there any comments
did go to that levy ownership, meeting that they had over in San Francisco. So I had a really good connection with Jessica. She said she was in charge of our area. And I was explaining to her everything. I showed her pictures and told her exactly what was happening out here. And she says that this is what they actually can work on. But we have to be surveyed first, and then they can come and take a look, see what they can do. Everything sounded really positive, but right now, I'm sorry, but you're bursting my bubble.
Well, I'm just going to
Well-
interject. We actually do have something on the agenda specifically about the
Mhm.
Army Corps, so maybe we can talk more about it
Okay.
when we get there. It's 5.4. I wanted to talk about that levy owners meeting and then another meeting that Rochelle went to called
Maybe
Silver
something.
Jackets. So I do want to hear more about that. But okay, so right now though, it would be better if U.S. Army Corps is not involved in this repair that we're trying to finish, because it'll just take longer at this point, right? I mean, it's already mostly done. We're just trying to get this last permit from the water board. So,
100%. And actually, based per the previous comment, we're actually kind of in agreement. Right now, everything you said and talked to Jessica about is correct. The levees aren't on the Army Corps' radar. We're not in their system. They need to be surveyed. We need to get into their system so that they can provide more assistance. So that's 100% correct. So we just, right now, we're not, like the levees, I forgot the term, but they're just, I think they're called farmer ag created levies or something to that effect. So the Army Corps needs to come in, do some assessments, just like you said, and we need to get into their system so that they can provide more assistance. So everything she said is my understanding as well, actually. So,
and
So,
we'll
yeah.
talk more about that in a few minutes when we get there. If there's more to discuss. I think there probably is. So Steve, I did want to mention, because it's not anywhere else on the agenda, that in case anyone wasn't aware, the County Board of Supervisors did approve our request to use that extra money for any other urgent/emergency repairs that are not covered by FEMA. And so we do have another project now that we're contemplating, which is the one that we approved on the Florex property. We approved that last meeting. And so I was hoping that we could roll an update on that into these levy repair updates as well. I don't know if you have any information about that.
yeah, actually, ironically, the first time, so the county scheduled a meeting with a geotechnical engineer to go back to one site, which is located at the southwest corner of Lovers Lane and Lovers Lane Bridge, to look at that erosion. The meeting was canceled because that was the day that we had a very large fire in the area and some roads were blocked off and things. But coordinating with that property owner, we're actually meeting tomorrow morning again with the geotech and a couple of the property owners, family members, because the property owners are on vacation, and so but there's folks there, and so they're going to let us on the property tomorrow morning, and this will actually be the second meeting, technically the third meeting, but the second meeting for this one discussion to come up with a game plan, which will probably look like, based on the first meeting, some geotextile fabric, some thick fabric, and some large rocks to stabilize some area of kind of some severe erosion, with the goal, and for our last meeting, to use a budget of about $50,000 of the roughly 200,000 that will be remaining after all the current work has been paid for. So yeah, we're actually meeting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., I believe, with the geotech on site, and then I'll coordinate with the Army Corps again and folks and say, okay, this is emergency repair. Please confirm we don't need to do anything because it's bad erosion and we don't want the levee to fail. But we're going to approach it as an emergency item. And I've already reached out to 2 contractors. I think I have to reach out to 3 for that type of thing. And so yeah, so there's some progress. So.
Excellent.
I have a question. This is only on the southwest part of that bridge?
It is, and it's understood there's some other areas, but from at least when I've been out there, that's the area that's I've identified as being pretty severe and needing some immediate attention. Again, there'll be $100,000-ish left over that the trustees can provide guidance to the county, like please look at this area, that area, this area. That's fine. There's other areas, but that's the only one we're focusing on is that southwest quadrant.
And presumably, we might still have a little bit more money to work with, right? Because we were only gonna spend, well, at least at this stage, we authorized up to 50,000 on that one section.
Correct.
And if we had 200,000 left, that would still leave a little bit of money left to work with for other areas.
Exactly. So again, if there's other areas that the trustees or folks in this room that think that the county needs to look at, we will definitely do that. So there should be money left over, yes. 100, 150, some big chunk of money still remaining after this week first.
Any other questions from trustees? All right, do we have any public comment?
Yes, we have a public comment in chambers. Rochelle Beerley, you can please approach the podium.
Well, I'm trying to find out how we can, I can suggest as a board that we speed up this current outstanding levy project, which was stopped in March. So we're almost there. And, I find it very frustrating that it keeps coming up with, now we're getting, Army Corps in the picture. They were never mentioned before. I think this the holdup was from the water board. And so my question to the board is, why are we faced with all these delays and we're not able to move forward and get the progress done? It's really important that we finish it, as we know. So I just wanted to express that.
Yes, I agree. I don't think we're trying to get the Army Corps involved. I think we're trying to prove that they don't need to be involved. But, Steve, can you assure us that there are no other issues on this application once we deal with this issue?
Yes, and this, yes, there's no other issues that I can see on the application. So this wasn't something that could count. Anyway, yes, the answer is yes.
Okay. So this time, the next meeting, we should have this thing submitted.
Yes, assuming the Army Corps says, no, we don't have jurisdiction over the top of your levies for all the reasons that were mentioned in the last few minutes.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on this agenda item?
There appears to be no further public comment.
All right. We will move on then to the status of the FEMA application. Do you have any further good news for us there?
So I checked our FEMA applications. The only small piece of good news is that FEMA looked at the projects within the last month, but there's no progress. They just say we've looked at your projects. And so for the debris removal, it's pretty much in the same phase as it was. What I did talk to, there was a little bit of progress there. I did talk to FEMA just a couple weeks ago, and they said if you want to upload your additional information of where locations are for debris removal permits, where the burn pile was, occurred, even though the third one has not occurred, we can do that. They don't know if it'll move the project forward, but so I've actually started to enter that information of the locations of the debris, both the debris locations and where the debris were burned or will be burned. And then it's still kind of in the environmental review stage. But so I started to enter some of that data, so that's one thing. And then let's see, projects, yeah, and then there in the library repairs it says the project is being coordinated between Environmental Historic Preservation Group and the Grants Manager Group, which is a new occurrence, but it doesn't get us closer to reimbursement. We're just at kind of a holding pattern, I guess you'd say, but it says those two groups are coordinating. So that's the status of the food application.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the trustees? Are there any public comments?
There appears to be no public comment.
Very well, we will move on to 5.4. This is the item that I referenced earlier, and an update on 2 meetings. One was the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Levy Owners Workshop, and then subsequent to that, something called the Silver Jackets meeting, which we will explain. Let's talk about the Army Corps of Engineers Levy Owners meeting first. So I believe that we had Trustee Ascona attend. Is that right? Okay. And we also had advisory board member Rochelle Beerley attend. So, Trustee Ascona, Paula, why don't you go first and tell us what you learned there and what you think is important for us to know tonight.
I think I already mentioned it earlier. I brought it in because it was also in 5.2, what was it, regarding the levee repair, and I thought that Army Corps would be one that could probably help us out. They are working very, very diligent with the Pájaro levee out there, and they're getting things going. They're getting things moved. They're getting their levees repaired. There's a lot of positive movement as to what's going on over there. And I feel like we are not moving, but we are in a sense. I mean, we have the levees repaired, we have the debris removed, but I was just wondering if the Army Corps could possibly come in and retrofit or fix the levees, because they're old. No one has given them attention at all. So when I brought this up to Jessica, she says that we weren't even in their system. And that if we can submit a letter and ask for a PL 8499, which is just a letter that probably ties in the FEMA with the Army Corps and puts the creek into their system. And that way they can pull it up and they can see what the measurements and the heights and the water and everything that's going through. And if we were to be in a disaster situation, they would know exactly what's happening, pinpointing it, finding the level of the water that's going through. And they would also be sending supplies. They have this container of flood fight, and this container has all these things that can be brought over to the flood area, and it has everything in there to help those who are affected by the floods. But my only thing that I really picked up was like, why were we not in their system? That was my concern, and everybody there was trying to help me, and can you get this from your county, get this from everywhere, so that we can get you on our system. But I guess right now that I'm realizing ours is just a small creek and it's just by farmers, I'm not sure if it's going to be able to be on there.
Steve, do you have a comment?
Well, I read the material that you sent from your meeting. I think it sounds very encouraging as well, because I agree, the creek and those levees are not on the radar of Army Corps for whatever reason. I don't know the reason, but it's absolutely worth applying for, having them come visit the creek, the site, and trying to get into their system, so to speak. I think it was, well, it doesn't matter what happens in the past. Long story short, we should absolutely apply and get as much information to them as possible ASAP. And so I'll probably work with you directly. The county will help to have that information provided, and maybe have a meeting, virtual meeting with Jessica, and get her guidance as well to start the process. So, but the material you sent sounds very encouraging.
I agree that maybe that's the next step, is to have a virtual meeting with Jessica, so that, because it sounds like she was providing you with certain very specific things that we needed to do, like get this information on this form or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can start the process of being registered with them. Now, I think Rochelle has some similar information. Again, let's just focus on the Army Corps meeting first, and then we can talk about Silver Jackets in a minute.
Yeah, I concur with what Paula said. Basically, I have also requested historical documents from Army Corps of Engineers, since they were responsible for one of the fixes on the levee. She did send me, I think I forwarded it to you. So we started with that. Basically, my takeaway from this meeting was that we, as a district, need to start with our own O&M manual, which is Operation and Maintenance Manual. They suggested that we check with our county to see if we have any historical records on maintenance on this, on our creek. I believe I followed up with, and I don't know if we did. Okay, and then the big suggestion there with what Paula was speaking about is that our county is the one that has to be registered with Army Corps of Engineers. And now that you brought this up, I also confirmed with them at the meeting that we are not registered with them. So
Maybe it's for a different thing?
no,
Is it
it's a
different
flat
type of
registration, and
Okay.
they said that if we are registered with them, then the county should receive a notification every year, a notification letter that they send out only to registered members. County people, once we're registered, we're members, and that this letter falls under the Army Corps PL 8499 plan, which is a special emergency plan that they use for flooding and repairing. And if we're registered for this, then we get the benefits. But as of now, we're not registered. And my understanding was that it's a county registration, not a Pacheco Stormwater District registration. So we need to not only be registered, but we also need to provide an O&M manual on the levee in order to qualify for this very important PL 8499. It's a very specific, special operational plan, I guess, that they offer to flood areas, which is happening in the Pajaro. That's why they're benefiting from it. So my takeaway was, and then they also strongly urged us that we need to develop a maintenance agreement with Fish and Game. And I believe that we should talk to our council, see if he can work with us on developing a maintenance agreement. It seems to be our right as a district to fall into this and to have this be offered to us. And apparently, I believe it gives us a 5-year commitment or agreement with.
I'm going to interrupt because that is actually the next item agenda.
Okay.
So we'll talk about it then.
And then another benefit was that if we are if we are registered through Army Corps, we can qualify for, programs such as silt removal, which is done by the Department of Water Resources. So our registration is really important, and I think that we should really follow through with that.
Okay, well, since there seems to be some confusion about whether the county is registered or not, would we be able to have a county representative on a meeting with us I guess Jessica is the correct person at Army Corps? to talk
She's
to?
the one that's in charge of our area.
Okay. All right. So, who would like to be on this meeting then with Jessica? Okay. So Steve and Paula and then Rochelle. Okay. So I'll let you handle that, and then maybe you can come back. Well, if you can get a meeting together before our next regular meeting, then we can talk about what the next steps are to getting registered. But I think a meeting is good so that we can all be on the same page.
I think so too, because when I went, it's like everything that they were saying, I felt like I was lost. And they all had their laptops and they were looking up everything, and it's like, we're not here. You guys are not here. So,
Okay. Well, we will do what we can, right? We just have to know what the first step is. All right, then I also, before we leave this agenda item, I'm requesting that advisory board member Rochelle Beerley tell us about another meeting that she attended called Silver Jackets, and maybe you could explain first by telling us what Silver Jackets is.
Sure. Silver Jackets is basically a group of all different representatives from different boards. So you'll have the Army Corps, you'll have Water Board, you'll have Water Resource, you have
Having to do with flooding and water.
They're here to assist, and it was encouraged at the Army Corps that we get involved in that. So I attended the annual meeting, which was not a lot of information. It was more kind of wrap up and follow up. But we broke out into brainstorming sessions, and they wanted an idea that would help an underrepresented area work on a project that would help improve their situation. And so I just kind of put forth a quick little thing that stated that we're the Pacheco Water District, we're in San Benito County, happen to be in a very highly flood-prone area, working on fixing levees and doing repairs, but along with that, we're requested to have studies, to move forward, and they really kind of clamped onto the study idea. I guess that's an area where they can assist. And so basically, what we do is we are submitting the idea per their recommendation to apply for grant money for a hydro study, and I think it was the hydro study, and then they also suggested a study to figure out how the new dam might impact our district. So there were two studies that they suggested that we put forth. So that will be submitted tomorrow, and from that submission, they will pick the winners on that.
Tomorrow?
No, my submission will be tomorrow.
Okay.
And then from there, they'll convene, go over the applicants. I think there are 6 different projects that they're considering. And we kind of made it through the first round. They took ideas, and only one was going to be selected. That was our idea. So now we're on to the second round, and that goes into the big group with 6 different or multiple ideas
Okay, hold on, I'm gonna stop you there, because although I am so grateful that you represented us at the meeting, I don't know whether we have to vote on submitting this application, or whether you have the authority to do it, since you're not actually a trustee. Sean, what is your opinion on this?
Yeah, I would vote. Yeah, since she's not a trustee, you know.
Okay, so we really can't submit anything tomorrow, because we need a vote, and it's not even on the agenda. So we can't even vote, even if we wanted to.
Yeah. Unless there's been some general direction that was authorized previous to this, then yeah, you would need direction at some point from the trustees as a body. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know what happens. I mean, if you submit this and how formal is this?
Not very.
Not very?
It was
Okay.
basically a sheet of paper, and I will send this to you on what I have written down and proposed, and I'll copy, if you recommend that we copy Steve on that as well, so that you guys can look it over. The deadline is not tomorrow. I was just going to submit it tomorrow.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And it doesn't seem to be very formal. More just like a paper, fill out a paper questionnaire, follow the steps, and submit.
Okay.
What does it obligate us to do if we were to apply? Is there any material obligations?
No, what that would allow us to do if we got accepted or approved is, I guess we would meet with them on a more formal basis, put together a plan on how to seek, how to get formal grant funding for hydro studies, and also perhaps the study that would, that we could have money for if we were interested in seeing how the dam might affect our district. That was their suggestion too. So the only suggestion and assistance coming from Silver Jackets would be through the grants for studies.
Okay. But what you would be submitting is just, I don't know, is it kind of more like a pre-application, or is that, I mean, it's not a formal application that needs to be signed?
It sounds like I don't want to use the word contest, but maybe a forum that they're going to be holding, whoever, 10 applicants, one will be chosen. So nothing formal yet, just a submission, and again, their suggestion with their criteria, with what this event would cover, they thought the only thing that we could qualify for would be doing a study, having a study performed for us.
Okay. And if they choose us, like if you were to submit something and then they chose us,
Yeah.
then what would happen? Then we would have to meet with them and enter into some kind of formal, would we still have to submit another application?
I don't believe they would be applications, but more like maybe a project detail, project ideas on what we would seek from this and how they would assist us, or I guess inform us of how we would be benefited. But yeah, it's pretty low key. I think this is just the first kind of step to a more formal process.
Okay. So what is the deadline? It's not tomorrow, but what
That's
is
a good question. I left my notes on that at home, unfortunately. I can email that to you tonight if there is a deadline.
Okay.
I'm just not aware of one.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great if they've taken an interest in us. I don't know, it doesn't sound like submitting something formally obligates us to anything. I'm a little perplexed at how informal it is, but
Me too. It just seems like a nice, friendly group who are
Yeah.
looking to assist, overlooked areas, to see how they can help us get more stable, help
Yeah.
with their resources where they can.
okay. All right, well, I know you've sent me some information already, but if you want to send it to me and Steve and also whoever the contact person is there, maybe I can get a little bit more detail.
Sounds good.
But thank you for going to that meeting. I really appreciate it. All right, any questions from the trustees? All right, any public comment?
There appears to be no public comment.
All right, let's move on then. As I mentioned, the next agenda item is discuss the process of obtaining a maintenance agreement with California Fish and Wildlife. So as some background, several months ago, I think actually late last year, Steve mentioned that we could do this, and he sent us a sample agreement that Monterey County had with California Fish and Wildlife, and as an example of what's possible. But we didn't follow up at that time because we were still, well, we're still dealing with FEMA, but that was the more pressing thing, in getting the emergency repairs done. So now it's probably time to turn our attention to this. So Steve, what do we need to do?
Okay, so yeah, that's all correct. And Fish and Wildlife just has an application. It's 5 or 6 pages. I just outline some of the basics, 15 categories that they request, and I'll just hit on a couple. I think it was mentioned earlier, one thing that this trustee board will have to decide is, are we going to apply, are they, is the district going to apply for 5 years or less, or 5 years or more? And it seems like, doing a little bit of research, you would say, well, let's just apply for 20 years. Well, sometimes things change, and how you want to maintain your creek changes. And a lot of agencies, it seemed like a lot of agencies went for the 5 years or less, because it kind of, the impression I got is help you focus more on your strategy for that 5 years. And then you can always apply for, another agreement for more than that. But there were a few that actually applied for more than 5 years when I was doing the research on this. So that's something to consider, just a time frame. And the fees, ballpark, 5 years or less, I think it was roughly, $9,000 on average. And then for each 5 years after that, or for each year, it was about $400 a year, just kind of an FYI. When the agreement was finalized, I don't recall if that was just to apply, or if that was actually the agreement. So we'll have to dig into that and bring this back in the next meeting and perhaps have more details. And then the other, components that are noteworthy is you might have to, the district, I should say, might have to hire an environmental firm, to kind of talk about how we're going to protect wildlife, plants that need to be protected. I'm not sure there's fish that reach this area, although the dam expansion projects thinks that fish might establish themselves in this corridor. But long story short, something that will need to be considered is, does the district want to hire an environmental firm? The county has a handful that we use that we can recommend, because there are some kind of site-specific types of questions that need to be answered. I don't think it's a huge lift by an environmental firm, but it looks like we might need some folks involved. The district might need an environmental firm involved. And then, similar to the Army Corps coming to the site, Fish and Wildlife will also come to the site and supposedly visit the site. Although, like a previous suggestion, that we use a drone. I'll talk about that with another item coming up, I think, to use some drones. But somehow they have to make a site inspection. Let's just say the district's going to use their own mile of the creek for the permit. Then Fish and Wildlife is gonna come visit or make some sort of inspection, drone or in person of the site, and just confirm what's here and look at some of the plant species and things. And then that kind of leads me to my last discussion item is, does the district want to have, a maintenance agreement to include not only PSWD, but, the Pacheco Pass Water District, upstream. Probably the ideal situation is that you start downstream at the downstream limits of PSWD, and then go all the way up to maybe Casa de Fucha where the county limits are. But then that would require, obviously, coordinating with Pacheco Pass Water District. But that's something to consider because, Pacheco Stormwater District is, I don't know what the exact length is, a third of that whole stretch, but it would be, I think I'd recommend that we at least reach out to Pacheco Pass Water District and try to get them involved because they have a full easement over upstream, a couple miles from Pacheco Pass Water District limits. At least try to loop them in to that agreement. And so those are some things to consider, but I'll just pause there for questions and comments.
Well, clearly we need to do this, right? If we're gonna remove anything other than dead stuff, and there's lots of vegetation that's not dead, and we can't really touch it without this agreement, right? So it's key to start working on this.
It is, although I'm encouraged that, first of all, the answer is yes, but it sounds like there's a potential that Army Corps can also perform some similar activities. So we'll have to maybe explore both paths in parallel. But yes, the district should definitely move forward with this. Now we're kind of done some cleanup and repairs and things. And it's just a matter of this district, but we also want to take a pass our district to partner.
Okay, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed this evening. So what is the next thing we need to do to move this forward? Or what is the first thing that we need to do?
I can go into the details of what needs to be filled out. I think the next step, and I can set it up, is we have a few consultants, and if the trustees direct the county, I can set up a meeting with our environmental consultants that's worked on this type of agreement, and they can inform all of us how they might be involved in the application process. But it's not overly complicated once you have that environmental aspect going into it. So, 80% of it is just the project, what do you want to maintain, how often, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we're going to need some environmental folks to give us some guidance on, how we deal with plant resources and things that are in our stretch of the district. So next step is I can set up a meeting with environmental folks, and I think they can give us some insights and guidance on the application. And then the district would just decide, okay, we want to apply, and here's the fee, $8,000, and we submit it to Fish and Wildlife, and they come out. And I'm not trying to sugarcoat it that it's simple, but the application part doesn't look overly complicated. Actually getting an agreement might be a bit of a process, but the application shouldn't be too hard.
So when we meet with the environmental folks, we should probably have the application in front of us, right? Or, I mean, maybe you know what the application looks like. I have no idea. Is it 4 pages? Is it 40? Is it, I mean,
It's about, 8 to 10 pages.
Okay.
and It just has these 15 categories, basically.
I see.
Yeah.
okay. All right, so we should have the application and yeah, I guess we should have a meeting with them and then we can report back at this regular meeting. So I guess it would be better to do that and then approach the Pacheco Pass Water District if we wanted to do that, because then we would have a little bit more information about what we were talking about, what we're proposing to them. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Well, let's see. Paula, do you have any questions or comments?
Mentioned that there was a fee of 8,000 or 9,000.
Well, it depends on the scope. It's all the fees I saw for less than 5 years for this segment looked like it would be under $10,000. There's a lot of variations on widths and what you want to maintain and things like that. But generally speaking, for this stretch of the particular, PSWD segment, for 5 years or less, it looked like it'd be under $10,000 for the agreements finalized. So, and then I think it was $300 or $400 a year. Because you could do it for 3 years, you don't do it for 5 years. So you say if you want to do it for 5 years, and it was $380 plus, for each of those years. I think for Fish and Wildlife to stay involved and part of the process basically. So that was roughly the fees. It was 8,000 or 9,000 for the agreement, and about $400-ish a year for 5 years.
So my other question is, what do we get for that money? I mean, do they come and survey or analyze it once a year, or just when they feel that they need to come out?
Yeah.
So I think I'm not sure that Fish and Wildlife does much, except they say you have a permit and you're allowed to perform these activities every year. They have 1 or 2 folks locally that work with the district to maybe if they have questions to reach out to them. But I'm not sure they provide a lot of any physical services, but just more correspondence and guidance.
Yes.
That type of thing.
Okay.
So they're just granting us permission, basically, so we won't get in trouble.
Correct.
I mean, they don't come out there and look and see what we're doing and all that. I mean, that's pretty much what
They can definitely come out every year
Okay.
and inspect, absolutely.
Okay.
And I don't recall if they do more than that, but it definitely says they'll be out. They can be out there once a year to check on the activities.
Oh, thank you, Steve. Is there any public comment?
Yes, we have a public comment in chambers. Rochelle Beerley, you can please approach the podium.
I'd like to just chime in on this topic. If we, for example, if we had an O&M manual together, or the operations, and if we had that together as a district, would that ease our application process? Because I think now, with what we've already performed, which was the first clean out, in which we didn't work with any environmental engineers on, trees and plants and all this. We disturbed it for sure, I guess. But we were never consulted with that, and I think that would be a good start. We started, and that's going to be part of our operations records that we're going to start with. But so I just wanted to add and say that perhaps that might be a good thing that we already have begun work and we didn't disturb and ruin the creek thus far. And so I think that would be working in our favor. And yeah.
Thank you, Rochelle. So Steve, so how does the operations and maintenance manual, how does that relate to this agreement that we're trying to get with Fish and Wildlife? I mean, would having that help our permit process? And then my second question is, so what do we have to do to get that? And how complicated does it have to be?
So, looking at the sample that we sent, I mean, it's from Monterey. Theirs is fairly detailed, but Monterey's, the facilities are a lot larger than, Pacheco Creek. So, the county, when we had a similar agreement for our bridges, it was about like a paragraph per bridge. Thou shalt, we are allowed to do X, Y, Z. But for creeks, that's why you also need the environmental folks to just provide more guidance. So, okay, we can take out this type of invasive species, but we need to try to preserve this other type of native species of plants. And the reason why we were able to clean up the debris before, because the Governor Newsom, he actually did a proclamation last year that said, thou are allowed to clean out the creeks because we've had really bad storms and things. And Army Corps and Water Board said, well, they were part of that proclamation. So, but as was mentioned, it was done very carefully, and things are growing back already, and the creek's living and thriving. So, so there is some experience there that's definitely worthwhile and can be helpful when we have these discussions. But if you look at the Monterey sample I sent, I think for Pacheco's segment, it's maybe half as detailed as that. I don't know if that answers your question, but that one, it was a few pages long.
So the environmental consultants that we would be meeting with, could they also help us? Well, okay, so there's this operation and maintenance manual. I guess part of it is just a record of what we've done, but then would it also be prospective, this manual, this O&M manual, in terms of this is what we normally do?
Absolutely, and as we discussed previously with the Army Corps, I did look, I couldn't find a previous O&M manual. It's really for the creek and the levee, right? And I don't know if the county at least had that, at least from the records I could search for. So, yeah, Army Corps is going to want to work with us and say, okay, we'll work with you, but what is your plan for operation and maintenance of these levees, right? And similarly, it's real similar for the stream bed alteration agreement. That one's more of just maintenance of the stream bed, but obviously there's similar concepts of how are you going to maintain your facility, basically, right? And do you perform that in an environmentally friendly, sensitive, respectful way to the environment? So they're definitely similar. I think Army Corps is going to focus more on the levee part of it and the structure of the levee, and then Fish and Wildlife is more, just the living organisms within the creek and how you're going to affect them when you do your maintenance activities. But they're definitely related. So maybe on that phone call, maybe it's worth having the Army Corps discussion first with Jessica and folks that want to be on that call, and that will help us understand what they're looking for operation and maintenance, from an Army Corps perspective. And then we talk to some environmental folks with that knowledge and say, okay, how do we also incorporate that into our stream bed alteration agreement? Right? So maybe it's 2 smaller tasks for this environmental group team. My guess is that the district's gonna have to have a contract with, hopefully not a large contract with, environmental consultants.
How much are we talking about, basically? Like, do they charge by the hour?
Well, no, to have the
For the
phone
project.
calls, I'm 95% sure that'll just be, they'll jump on a phone call with us.
Okay.
So, yeah, just have the discussions. I don't think they're
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Is there any other public comment on 5.5?
Yes, we have a public comment in chambers.
I just wanted to follow up on the O and M really, since we're tied to that. It seems to me that the O and M is pretty much, at this point, historical records. And then I think we need to sit down and decide what, how we are going to engage in the maintenance plan. But historical records are quite important from what I received the email on, what the information stated. And I just wanted to add that. And FEMA or Army Corps and that PL 8999 thing, they won't even talk to us without an O&M manual. So I would say we should put that on the top priority.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
There appears to be no further public comment.
All right, let's move on to 5.6. Discuss and approve levee cleanup by California Conservation Corps. So this was actually on the agenda last time, and we kind of decided to table it. I think that the idea was, and correct me if I'm wrong in remembering it this way, but the idea was that because there's so much stuff that grows back so quickly, that we should have a more comprehensive clean out strategy, and Conservation Corps would only be taking out the dead stuff, I guess, or the loose debris or whatever. And that my understanding was, the consensus was that it wasn't really worth pursuing at this time. But I wanted to revisit it because, I mean, we're probably going to need to get rid of this stuff one way or another anyway. So, and it could also, well, I mean, it could affect some of the other things that we're trying to do. For instance, with the Army Corps, they might want to see that we've at least cleaned out that kind of stuff, the stuff that's dead. So anyway, Steve, if you could comment on that.
Yeah, based on what we've been discussing tonight, Army Corps and others would appreciate that, the district is making some efforts to clean the creek, even currently. And so I think the price we received, as we're showing, was about $13,000 per week for a 12-person crew. You're correct; they're not going to be able or allowed to just rip out, living things out of the creek bed, but just to probably on a smaller scale perform what was done between Lover's Lane upstream to San Felipe, which again, just to refresh your memory, they don't have large equipment. They use small handheld equipment, chainsaws and things like that, and just get things out of the creek as they move along, which would be helpful because those are some of the things that cause backups and flows that are not a good thing. So that was a discussion. If we do move forward, I think there was a previous suggestion, which is good. I can, if we're going to move forward with that effort, then I can ask the fire department to CAL FIRE to fly their drone. And from what I know, and we got to talk about this as a team, but I know there's one area slightly upstream of Lover's Lane Bridge that still needs to be cleaned, and then there's more area downstream of Lover's Lane Bridge within the creek that we haven't, to the best of my knowledge, we haven't cleaned much. So those are kind of the two focus areas that I think, if the trustees want to engage the crew to and perform some cleaning. And another thing to note is California Conservation Corps, they come in and they do what they can, and they kind of put everything on the back side of the levee, outside of the creek, and so there would still be some burning efforts required for the debris piles. So I think those are some of the items that we discussed at a previous meeting.
Well, I'm not sure we should move forward with a vote on this tonight, especially since Armando's not even here. But I did wanna just sort of keep it on the agenda, so to speak. Are there any comments from trustees about it?
Move it to the next meeting.
Yeah. The other thing is now, if we're gonna be spending money for fees for the maintenance agreement, we have a little over 50,000. So we wanna make sure that we have what we need. I mean, 'cause obviously we're gonna need to use that. That's the money we're gonna have to use for the fees and that sort of thing, for the permits. Okay, is there any public comment on this agenda?
Yes, we have a public comment in chambers. Rochelle Beerley, if you could please approach the podium.
I think revisiting the CCC is important or is worthwhile because, the feeling, and maybe you can concur with that, Paula, the feeling I got at FEMA, and maybe this was from a follow-up email, was that before FEMA decides to work with us or help us or assist us, they'd like to see how we've been caring for things. So, that kind of triggered, well, maybe we should reconsider the efforts of CCC, because it might, we can add to the O&M, annual on that, and it could perhaps be a once-a-year cleanup or an every 6-month cleanup. We can see how we like it, if it's, money well spent, and then that, I think, shows good effort on our part as a district, to FEMA, and that would be my suggestion, so.
All right, thank you, Rochelle. Any other public comment on this agenda item?
Yes, we have one more public comment. Marcel Beerley, if you could please approach the podium.
Marcel Beerley, San Benito County. I also think that we should move forward with the CCC. I would give it a 1 week to see what we can do, not even hire them 2 or 3 weeks, so just 1 week. But I would like to see the drone footage, not me personally, but that maybe Steve can organize that with CAL FIRE or somebody, so that we can then pick the 2 worst places or whatever the worst place, and really kind of see, can they even do something, can they even finish this one thing in 1 week or not. So I don't know if you can get them for half a week, but I would probably do a week to kind of see what we can do, and based on that we can estimate what it would cost for the whole stretch if we have the drone footage.
Okay, thank you. Well, so maybe that's, it sounds like that's worthwhile to try to get the drone footage. So that we, as Marcel just mentioned, we can really focus the efforts of the CCC.
Okay, yeah, I'll order the drone footage regardless, and I think it was suggested earlier, I'll just request downstream, kind of at the end of where the district ends its limits, and go up for a few miles, just because I think it'll be beneficial for just a lot of reasons, just to see what's out there regardless.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'll order that, print it out with CAL FIRE, and go from there.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
There appears to be no further public comment.
Okay, we're moving through here. 5.7. Consider adopting a resolution ordering an election for 2 seats on the Pacheco Stormwater District Board of Trustees.
Good evening, trustees. At the direction of the elections department, we were requested to provide required documentations to note a statement of election facts, adopt resolution ordering an election for December 3 of 2025. Attached to the agenda item, you have the resolution, and the resolution requires that the respective county election departments of San Benito and Santa Clara counties conduct the election and consolidates the district's election with the election on December 3 of 2025.
So there's going to be an election on December 3rd of 2025, an off-year election within the
Correct.
county. Okay. All right, so this, okay. And this would be for, the seats currently held by trustee Alfaro and trustee Escona.
Correct.
Okay, when do we need to adopt this resolution in order to get on the ballot for December 3, 2025?
We were given a deadline for December, so next month, but we decided to prepare the item for this meeting in case if we need to make some sort of edits to it.
Yes. Okay, so the resolution itself, I'm going to assume is what it needs to be, right?
Correct. So that resolution there was, for the most part, a template that was provided by the elections department, and I specifically tailored it for this district, provided some examples from other water districts.
Okay. Can you direct our attention to what you would specifically like us to proofread? I know we went through this a few months ago when we thought we were going to have the election this year. And I know we made some comments at that time. Let's see. I know that, okay, so it looks like you have the 41 4th Street as the address, which I think was something that we had requested when we last discussed this. You have our personal emails, but not our phone numbers or addresses. I mean, that seems okay to me. Was there anything in particular that you wanted to draw our attention to?
No. Other than this, these are the required documents that are needed to call for the election.
Okay. Do you have any questions? All right. I'd be inclined to go ahead and vote on this tonight, just because with the holidays coming up, I'm not exactly sure. In fact, we're going to talk about that, when the next meeting is going to be. It could be after December 1 even. So, I mean, we have a quorum, correct? So we can go ahead and do this?
Correct.
Okay, this isn't anything that's going to be controversial. I don't think that Armando is going to object. We need to do this. We need to have an election. So, all right. Well, then, is there a motion to adopt a resolution ordering an election December 3rd, 2025 for 2 seats? Well, actually, you know what? I'll just do it. I move that we adopt a resolution ordering an election on December 3rd, 2025 to elect for the election of 2 seats on the Pacheco Stormwater District Board of Trustees. Is there a second? Is there any discussion before we vote? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, so the resolution is adopted. The election will be December 3rd, 2025. Thank you for your work on this, Victor. Oh, you know, I didn't, I did this is the second time I've done this. I did not call for any public comment. Okay, was there any public comment on this, 5.7?
There appears to be no public comment.
Okay. So the last time I did this, Sean, you told me that we needed to vote again. Are you recommending that tonight, that you do this, we do this again?
No, I think you're fine, since nobody has raised any sort of issue with making public comment. I think we're fine to move forward.
Okay, thank you very much. That'll save us at least a minute, so. All right, let's move on to 5.8, update on requirements for an election regarding special assessment. Okay, so, earlier this month, I, along with Steve and Sean, had a meeting with a couple of folks from the county, Joe Paul Gonzalez and Leanne, I can't remember her last name now, but they are with the, what is it? Auditor, okay, the county auditors. And the topic was, well, okay, let me backtrack. So when I went to the Board of Supervisors meeting in September to request that they authorize us to use the surplus for the additional emergency repairs to the levee, they made it clear that they did not want us to keep coming back to them for money. So I kind of promised them that we would look into, well, obviously different funding sources, but I specifically mentioned a special assessment, which actually a tax, okay? So I promised them that we would look into this, and so then after that we had this meeting with the county auditors, and I just wanted an idea of what we would have to do to have such an election. And, you know, since we just approved an election for the trustees, I mean, that could be a potential date, I guess, for this for a special tax election as well. But, so first we talked about the process of again, this would be a parcel tax, right? And it was explained that even though they're calling it an assessment, it's not strictly speaking an assessment, because it's not based on on the assessed value. It could be based on lot size, but it can't be what they call ad valorem, as I understand it, which is actually based on the assessed value of the property. But the first question that came up was how this election would even take place. And the question is, who would be voting basically on this tax? Would it be just the property owners, or would it be everyone who lives within the boundaries of the Pacheco Stormwater District? And I think that originally a lot of us were going on the assumption that this is what's called a landowner district. So it would just be the property owners that would be voting on this tax. But apparently there was some suggestion early on that this could be a different kind of district, something called a voter-nominated district, which would mean that everybody who lives there would vote. So I asked Sean if he could do a little research into this, and I don't know, Sean, were you able to find out anything?
I was. I still don't have a totally definite answer, but I do believe that we are a voter-nominated district. Landowner districts are unique and special, and I haven't seen anything that specifically calls a stormwater district out as being a landowner district. So I believe that essentially by default, we are a voter nominated district.
Wow, okay. So that's interesting. All right, so we'll have to go back, because I know that there were some different requirements. I don't know, do you have any idea of what those are, Sean?
I think the meeting was in the context of that we are a voter nominated district. So I think the things that you laid out are applicable.
Okay, so everyone who lives here would vote. So that okay, because we have property owners that don't live in the district. So does that mean that they don't actually get to vote on this?
That's a good question. That I'm not totally sure about. Yeah. And was it within the boundaries of the district itself, or was it broader than that? I'm not sure myself.
Okay. Well, I guess we're gonna have to do a little bit more research on this. Do you have some ideas of how you can get answers to these questions, or do we need to meet with someone else?
I may have to meet with some other people. Yeah, it is a complex sort of area, not a lot of guidance. And like our statute, I think is from 1903 or something like that.
Yeah.
So some of the stuff is very old and it's not readily available sort of information. So, I will pursue that, but it's not necessarily an easy or straightforward task.
Okay. Well, I guess we really can't make any plans until we get this nailed down. So, all right, let's continue to research this because it will obviously have impacts on how the election is conducted. And then once we figure that out, then we can talk about, because they also said, well, if you're going to put this on the ballot, you need to have a purpose. Right, a specific purpose, I guess, for what you're going to be using the money for, and we'd obviously want to talk about how much we're proposing. I personally feel that it would have to be pretty modest in order to get passed, because I think it even has to be 2/3, right? If I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Yeah, since it has to do with taxing, it has that increased requirement. Yeah.
Right. So it's not even a simple majority.
Right.
So we have more homework to do on this. So we will keep you posted. But before we leave this agenda item, I did want to. The other thing that came out of this meeting is that I finally have a little bit more clarity about the income that we do have. If you'll recall, I've mentioned this in the past, that we get about $1,300 a year in revenue from Santa Clara County. And I never understood what this was, but Joe Paul Gonzalez did sort of explain it, and it's really kind of convoluted, and it goes all the way back to the 1970s, to when Prop 13 was passed. But essentially, when Prop 13 was passed, obviously that limited the property taxes that the county could charge, and so their revenue was slashed quite a bit. But at that time, our district apparently had a bond out. We had, I guess, voted on a bond. And so we were paying back this money from the bond. And so San Benito County said, okay, we will continue. I'm not explaining this very well. So Prop 13 limited property taxes to 1%, right? So when you get your tax bill, it's 1%, and then they can raise it a certain amount every year, is my understanding. And so out of that money that the county started collecting after Prop 13, it was reduced to 1%. Out of that, they agreed to pay back the bond, basically, that our district had this obligation to pay on the San Benito County side, and Santa Clara agreed to continue giving us money from the 1%, that everyone is taxed. impact on their property. When the bond was paid off, San Benito County stopped giving any money to the district because the way it was structured is that they said, okay, we'll help you pay off this bond, but once it's paid off, you don't get any more money from us. But that's not the way it was set up in Santa Clara County. So Santa Clara County has continued all these years to pay us $1,300 a year. And the properties, my understanding is that the properties that are in Santa Clara County that are in our district, it's not like they're paying more tax. It's just that what they are paying, some of that gets allocated to us. Whereas on the San Benito County side, that is not the case. They stopped allocating it to us once our bond was paid off. So I thought that was really interesting. So I guess that we will continue to get that money from Santa Clara County indefinitely. I'm certainly not going to bring it up to them because, I mean, if it weren't for that, we'd have nothing, pretty much, I think. So anyway, does anybody have any questions or comments about that? Any public comment?
Yes, we have a public comment. Marcel Beerley, if you could please approach the podium.
Yes, I would like to get a little bit more information on that parcel tax. Can we do some math or just kind of try to find out what that really means? Are we talking $5,000 a year? Are we doing only the landowners next to the creek, or is it the whole county that would be paying for this? I mean, there's the voting part, and then there is who is paying, and how much is that? Does that even make any difference? Based on parcel size, based on how much creek length you have, whatever that might be. So a lot of unknowns in regards to putting on the ballot if we don't even know what it really makes for a difference. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, do we put more effort into grants that we're getting every year, or we need to get some money for the Pacheco Water District, but where is our effort best placed? So if this is just a few homeowners that are paying into it at $200-300 a year times 20 people, I mean, we're not talking a lot of money. So I'm just trying to see what does that really come out to. I mean, if we work with Steve in regards to maintenance with fish and wildlife, we need maybe 20,000-40,000 per year just for that. I'm just throwing some numbers up, but we don't even know what that will cost per year. So if we're only making 5, we're in the hole 35 a year. So just trying to put some numbers behind that and what it could be. I mean, property tax and 1% is not much, and then you're adding the 0.00% on top of it, and another $50, another $100. It's not going to make a big difference.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. And these are all questions that we would have to answer, right? We'd have to determine. I mean, it's important to remember, I didn't think it was going to be an either or thing. I mean, obviously, yeah, the taxes are not gonna pay for everything here. But even when you apply for a grant, a lot of times there is a match, or like with FEMA, there's a match. Oh, Steve.
Yeah, well, to kind of segue on public comment and the trustees' comment, one of the things that was discussed with the auditors is typically an assessment is tied to a project or a task such as stream bed maintenance. And so I think we discussed that it had to be some kind of ballpark usage estimate for the assessment. So there was a nexus. So let's just say it was $20,000 a year to maintain the creek. Then if that was spread with all the property owners within the district, it's X dollars per year And maybe part of that is creek maintenance plus grant applications, but there had to be some tie for the property owners to a project or a task. So that was one of the things that was discussed.
Interesting. Is there any other public comment?
There appears to be no further public comment.
All right. We'll move on to 5.9. Review and approve a postcard mailer to district owners. So, our advisory board has been working on a possible postcard to mail out to the people who own property in the district. And I think we had a PowerPoint to show what we would come up with. Do we have that PowerPoint?
Yes, it's on the laptop ready to be presented.
Oh, okay. Would Rochelle, would you like to do that? Or maybe Victor, could you do it for us? Thank you.
Did not look at the
Yeah, he can show you where you click.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Correct. Which is
Good, so, what we've come up with so far is really basic and clean, and we're thinking about maybe this size. I don't know, a couple different sizes, and that, of course, that'll be determined on the pricing, but basic text, we need your support. We're trying to reach all the people living in the district so that we can get ideas, momentum, etc., and that we know what our purpose is and what we're doing. And we're trying to get everybody to show up at our meetings, which are held fourth Monday of every month, 6 p.m. And we had inquired to Victor, when we do have it printed, will the Zoom link be active? And I think the answer was, Victor?
no.
Okay. So how, and I guess we're still a little bit stuck on how to word that, how people can get a live Zoom link sent to them would be to email you, I guess, right?
Correct.
Okay. So that's where we put Victor's information on that flyer. And then Michelle's suggestion was, we'll have two parts of the brochure, the one in front describing who we are, where we are, and then the back with the accomplishments. So this shows our accomplishments thus far. And those are just random pics, if anybody has any other pictures. And then here is the front, what the front will look like, what the back will look like. And that's it.
Do you think we need any captions at all on the pictures, or is it obvious? I mean, you have before and
Captions
after.
don't hurt. That's a simple addition, I think. And yeah, captions don't hurt. And we can also, I don't know, is this something that we're thinking about doing every month, the flyer? Or
No,
once every couple of months, or one time?
Well, right now I think just one time and see, because we also have to see how much this costs.
Right.
We probably would need something bigger than this, I would think.
Okay.
At least the middle size. I don't know, but
Yep.
yeah, I guess we need to find out how much it would cost.
This was done by the county, because, perhaps, I don't know if we've discussed it, but Are we going to be paying this on our own, or do you think there might be any assistance from the county? Do they have printing access, since they engage in a lot of printing flyers?
I don't know, Steve, is there any way we could get help with this? I was thinking you'd have to pay for it, but.
I think the latter. I mean, I know staff would help process it, so to speak, but I don't think we're allowed to print the cards. Unless, well, if, and I don't know the answer to this, Sean, is Pacheco Stormwater District, is it like a non-profit organization? Because sometimes we can do things with non-profits, but I don't think it's quote-unquote a non-profit, this district.
The question?
Well, like, sometimes the county can do things for non-profit organizations, but the district is just a special district. It's like a water district, so to speak, right?
Correct. Yep.
So I don't think we're allowed to print postcards and things with county funds.
Do you have, I mean, do you have any recommendations of where we would go, or, I mean, I don't know what the county does. It might even end up being more expensive for us to use what the county uses. Maybe we just go to one of the local places.
That's very possible. Yeah. Yeah, we can, assist with some of that research, but you're right. It might be less expensive for
Yeah.
the district.
We just went to Postal Graphics or someplace.
I'll get a bid.
Yeah,
I
that
wanted
would
to
be
have
great.
that ready today, but I will get a bid, and present it at the next,
Yeah.
next forum.
The other thing that we need to, because right now we're mostly talking about, it's in English. So I don't know whether we need to do it in Spanish. If we do it in Spanish, we'd almost have to have one side English and one side Spanish. Yeah. I see. Okay. On the other hand, if the information is mostly pictures, that, and like meeting time and address, that's pretty basic. I don't know. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? On whether it's important to do this in Spanish as well? Let me.
We have Marcel Beardy.
My thoughts are, it would be nice to have it, but it's a teaser to get people in. Once they're in, we're gonna do 2 languages here. So, just think about
Yeah.
that.
Well, that is true. The
So-
meetings are in English.
Yeah.
That is true.
So that's just my thought.
So yes, to piggyback on that one, I remember the very first meeting that we had, they did have interpreters there. But that was a huge meeting and everybody was there, and I think everybody missed that concept that we were there to try and figure out what to do with everything, and now we realize nobody's showing up. All those people, I know some of them are property owners and some of them are within that district, they're not here. So yes, we do need to send that letter out, or the postcard out. I think English would suffice.
Okay. Well, we can make it, the pictures could be bigger if we do it that way. So, all right. Well, we're not making any decisions, I guess, tonight then, right? Because we still need to find out how much this is going to cost us. So we have a spreadsheet with all of the addresses for the property owners. Of course, that's the other question. So there's the people who own the property and where the tax bills go, right? And then there's the addresses themselves. And now that it appears that we are a voter nominated district, and then we need to address this, I guess, to the people who live there as well. Anyway, I'm sorry, didn't answer the question. I don't know why in my head, I have that there were like 90 or 100 addresses on that spreadsheet. Does that sound right?
It does.
Yeah.
I think it was just less than 100.
93 is the number that sticks in my head. I don't know if I'm remembering that correctly. So I think we would need at least 100, possibly more. If, we wanted to send this to people like non-resident property owners, which I think we should. Is there any public comment on this agenda item?
There appears to be no further public comment.
All right, then let's move on. Thank you, Rochelle, for your work on this. I think it's coming together very nicely. I think the pictures are really nice. They're nice quality pictures. So I think that'll be great. Okay, last but not least, the next meeting date. So our next regular meeting would be November 25th, which is right before Thanksgiving, I guess. I'm not going anywhere, but I don't know it is a busy time. And then the meeting after that would be, what's the date? The 23rd. Right before Christmas. So, we could keep those dates, or if we want, we could cancel the next regular meeting right before Thanksgiving and then have a meeting earlier in December and sort of have that serve as our November/December meeting. Just do one meeting earlier in December, count for both months. So any thoughts on that?
We were to do the first or second week of December? Is that what the thought would be?
I suppose, yeah. We could do December 2nd. Hopefully there's not another group that meets in this space at that time. I don't know. Victor, do you have access to the schedule?
I do not, but I can check later with our clerk of the board.
I think that if we find out which one would be open, whether it's the 2nd or the 9th.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Marcel, go ahead, please.
When are we planning for the flyer? Because if we really get momentum and we advertise the 4th Monday and then it's not on that Monday.
Right, I know. That's what I was thinking. We'll have to mail it out in January, right? Oh, yes.
So either the 2nd or the 9th of December.
Okay. Does anybody have any
I think
preference?
Happy medium would be the 9th
The
because
9th,
it's
okay.
between both holidays.
Okay. Would you like to? Well, so the motion we have to cancel our two regular meetings, and then, can we put it all in one motion, Sean?
Sure. Yeah, you do it all in one. That works. Yep. Mhm.
Okay, all right. So I move that we cancel our regularly scheduled meetings for November 25th and December 23rd, and have a special meeting on December 9th. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. So that will be our next meeting. Okay, and then, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion we adjourn today's meeting.
I second the motion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, meeting is adjourned. We'll see you all on December 9th. Thank you.